Now, this next section, like I did for last time, I'm actually going to take the words that I'm speaking to you, and I'm going to produce a short little video on this so you can look at these pictures. Sometimes pictures really, really help, and that may illustrate things very well, because I'd really like you to understand this one. This is kind of like the thing on the physiological response of the body to the cold. I want you to understand hang tag ratings and what they really mean and where do they come from. Now, where are you going to find this little video that I was just telling you about with these pictures that go along with my presentation tonight? You do it just like last week when I was telling you, go to the button, the banner on there that says Explore Winter Without Worries and PALS. You'll find it right in there on the list that will identify this. And we're going to call it Hang Tag Performance Rating. You'll find that it'll be under Hang Tag Performance Rating. Well, one of the things that happened years ago when I was working with Burlington Industries, and we were doing cold weather clothing development, and marvelous things came out of that. If you would watch, if you go to that safeharboralliance.com, Explore Winter Without Worries and PALS, you're going to see on there one of the videos is the history of PALS. And you might want to watch that because it'll give you a lot of background on this. But at one time I was working with Burlington Industries. We were developing the clothing to take it to market in a major way. And one of the things we're doing is working with the military a lot. I worked with all three branches of the military, some quite in depth. It was great fun, a great experience with these people. And one of the times I was back at Natick Laboratories, which is where the personal protection clothing and equipment comes out of. They do a marvelous amount of research and things back there. And of course, with the military, they have what they call their bunny boot. It's the white vapor barrier boot, the VB boot, and those kinds of things. You see them around. I'll talk a little more about them in a moment. And at one time, when I was back there, because I'm using things that take care of me at well below zero, 40 below zero, and things like that, and I asked them about this vapor barrier boot. I said, okay, you rate this thing for, 40 below zero. Somebody said 60 below zero. I said, how do you come up with that rating? Where does that number come from? And one of the technicians back there was explaining to me, he says, well, this is what we do with a piece of clothing like that, the VB boot, or any other clothing is, but the boot in particular. He said, we're going to put that in a little cold chamber, and then we put a copper foot in it. It's a heated copper foot. And so what you can do is you can pump so much energy into it, so many watts of electricity going into this heated thing. You can measure the outside temperature on the surface of the boot that's in this little cold box. And if I remember right, he said they run this chamber at plus 30 is where it is, a little bit below freezing. You measure the heat flux across it, and you have the temperature on the inside, the wattage going inside, the temperature on the outside. Now you can calculate what they call the CLO rating, C-L-O. CLO is an awful lot like the R rating, except it's for clothing. And so we know it has a CLO rating, and it was something like, 2.1 or whatever the number was, and that's good for, 30 or 40 below zero. And this is okay, and I'm thinking, what the heck does a copper foot have to do with my foot out there in the cold? And my conclusion is not much, because of the way they rate the boots. Okay, so when we take a look at this next object, I'm going to describe this to you because this is an ad, but I'll have this picture up in the video that I'm going to be doing that'll go along with this if you want to see this. And here we have something that looks outrageous. It's a pair of bare feet standing in some flip-flops in the snow in this statement. This is for an advertisement that we did when we were manufacturing these boots. Even these can keep your feet warm at 60 below zero. The question is, for how long? And then it goes along to describe the boot and everything that we manufactured. I teach people how to make something like this and the boot performance that we have. Now, I know that this boot that's in this picture in here and the one you'll see in the ad in just a moment I know that boot's good for 60 below zero. Why do I know it's good for 60 below zero? Because I've used it at 60 below zero, and I know what my feet felt like in it. In fact, if you watch that thing on the history of PALS, you'll see that some of the testing that we did, we built our own cold box, and I'll put some pictures up with this since I'm describing it, but we built our own cold box. It's just a little chamber that you can sit on. It has a chair that's kind of mounted to the side of it, and you have the holes in the top that are in this insulated top, and then it has insulated leggings that are just part of the PALS clothing that go down below. And now you can put on this little skirt and these leggings, and then you can put whatever boot you want on your foot. You can put the VB boot on one foot, and you can put the PALS boot on the other foot, or a Sorel boot or something else like that. And of Koflak boot, all these different ones we tested, and then you can get in this box, and we run our box at 30 below zero. Well, we're going to take a break right now for just a moment. After this break, I'll come back and I'll tell you how this testing went and what the results were. In fact, this whole idea of this ad and what I'm describing to you is to tell you that there's some missing information. Because we would sit in that box, I've done this, and there's another dozen or so people that have done this. We have thermocouples taped to our feet. We put them inside of one of these boots. You get inside of this box. You're reading the thermocouples, logging the readings on them. You sit in there, and you're sedentary. I mean, I'm measuring what the boot does. This is not the fact that I'm up and active and moving around. I'm sitting in a warm room, so I don't have any stress on my core or anything. My core is toasty warm. I'm just fine there, and I have my feet down in this 30 below zero box. It's all about the footwear. It isn't about my body. It isn't about the core temperature. It isn't about anything else. It's all about the boot. And then we measure what happens to the temperature decrease on those things. And if you'll take a look at this, I have this graph right here of these boots. Matter of fact, some of the common boots that we tested was the Caribou Sorel, which has a hang tag on it, by the way. There's a picture of the hang tag. It says -40, -40 Fahrenheit, -40 Celsius. They happen to be the same. So that's the hang tag on that Sorel boot there, -40. The U.S. Army VB boot, the white boot, sometimes they're black, and then there was the PALS Arctic boot. And then we take a look at the temperature curves off of those things. Well, this top curve over here, or it's a graph, a bar graph on it, shows the Sorel Caribou, and this is average of several people on this. And this is in that box, run at 30 below zero, sitting sedentary, measuring what happens with the boot. And so the temperature loss on the toes is 20 degrees an hour. Okay, 20 degrees an hour. So if you start out at a normal foot temperature, let's say about 89 degrees, after an hour it's down to 79 degrees. That's starting to feel chilly. In matter of fact, that's getting downright cold. And then you go along a little further, and it doesn't take you long to get out of there because you're in pain. A 70-degree temperature, or even an 80-degree temperature on your feet is unpleasant. The Army VB boot, it averaged around 16 degrees per hour loss. Okay, so it's not quite as rapid. Then you take a look at this PALS, we called it the Frostbuster boot back at that time, and it's where it's dry. We did things both dry and wet, by the way. It lost 1 degree per hour. But what was interesting is, let's just say it was 1 degree per hour forever, but what we discovered was it would lose 1 degree per hour for maybe an hour or two, and then it would kind of stabilize, and sometimes it'd go up and it'd go down a little bit, but it never got cold. That was the point. You could sit in that box all day long, sedentary, 30 below zero, not moving, and your feet didn't get cold. In the case of the Sorel or the VB boot or Koflak or the other boots that we tried, there was a bunch of them, you sat in there very long, your feet got cold. After a while, they hurt. Another curve down below that one, a graph on there, you see what's going on. This is with the PALS Frostbuster boot, and this is bare feet, and then the Army VB boot with 2 pairs of wool socks on. You see after 90 minutes, foot temperature was down to 45 degrees. 45 degrees hurts. That is serious pain. You can't go much longer because you're going to get into injury. The graph down below that is of the Frostbuster boot, bare feet in it, no sock or anything, and the Sorel Caribou boots with 2 pair of wool socks. After 45 minutes, down to 47 degrees. And so, it can crash pretty quickly in there. These other boots, and there's different ones that are made kind of like this, they did not do the job of what we call. Now, I'm not here to sell you a boot necessarily. That's not my point. You can't buy the Frostbuster boot at this point in time. I hope to get it back into production and do it right the way it's supposed to go. But all I want to give you as an illustration is, what do the hang tags mean? They don't tell you very much. As a matter of fact, back in 1989, fall of 1989, we had the Frostbuster boot in the Cabela's, in their catalog. And you see, and you look at this page right here, a picture of that, the Frostbuster boot right above it is the original Zero Guard boot. And the little thing there says guaranteed to -70 degrees. Well, I'm going to read the text for you on this. It's probably a little hard to read in there, but I'll read this for you. And you figure out which boot you would buy based on the advertisement. This is the problem with advertising and with different hang tags and things like that. The original Zero Guard boots. Okay, so they're not the best looking boots to come down the pike. They are commonly known in the military as Mickey Mouse boots. But in extreme cold weather, when warmth is everything, these are the boots that get the job done. They are designed and manufactured to the most demanding specifications to provide maximum protection from the elements in the most severe conditions. They meet all U.S. government specifications. Multiple layers of wool felt provide insulation to protect your feet from cold injury in temperatures as low as minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The insulation is completely sealed within layers of waterproof rubber. There is no loss of efficiency even if feet become damp. Even if ice water spills into the boot, it warms to body temperature rapidly. They are the perfect boots for sedentary activity like ice fishing, stand hunting, or waterfowl hunting, but great anytime cold and moisture are factors. Also recommended for running winter trap lines. Can be used with skis and snowshoes. Average weight 7 pounds, made in the U.S., $149.95. Okay, so that was the advertisement for the Mickey Mouse boot that you could buy. Here was the Frostbuster boot. I'll read this because you probably can't see it. Frostbuster boots, guaranteed to keep your feet warm and dry, as cold as minus 60. Okay, the other boot says 70, this one says 60, so right there, gee whiz, golly. Not just for a few hours, but for days at a time. Designed after 30 years of extensive research with cold weather activities, this boot that keeps your feet warm and dry is durable, lightweight, comfortable, and fully adjustable. The 1000 denier Cordura upper is abrasion, scuff, and puncture resistance. 3 different layers of insulation conform to your foot for added comfort. Fiberglass shank and cushioned insole reduce fatigue. These boots are larger than conventional boots, but weigh less, adding to weather comfort. Upper drawstring, 2 upper straps, arch strap, and toe strap allow you to adjust the Frostbuster to your feet. The adjustments vary the heat retention as conditions change. Compare all the features and you'll find these boots have the quality and performance to pay for themselves. 18 inches high, average weight 6.4 pounds, $164.95. So you take a look at it right there and you say $164.95, and it's only good for minus 60. The others are $149.95, and they're good for minus 70. Which one are you going to buy? You know, based on that description right there, just reading that, not understanding what's going on, it's like, okay, well, I'll go for the cheaper boot because it goes for a colder temperature. So they were unsuccessful. There weren't a lot of sales because, the competition was cheaper and looks like it's a better performer. What's the truth really? You'll take a look at what the curves were and the performance and everything. And then if you understand the problems with a completely waterproof boot, you see the Frostbuster boot had no waterproofing. When it's 60 below zero, there ain't no water out there to get you wet. The only water that you have is inside coming off you, and it escapes right to the outside. Whereas if you take a look at the VB boot, that you're inside of a rubber boot, the water can't get out, and the tag that goes with the VB boot says that you must change your socks 2 to 4 times a day. Dry socks 2 to 4 times a day, because if you don't, you end up with trench foot. And that's an ugly thing to have. Anyway, what I'm telling you is, I'm not selling you a boot right now, I'm just saying, what do the hang tags mean? And if you wanted to have a meaningful hang tag, in fact, this is one of the things that I have been interested in doing, is developing a hang tag system that would actually tell you something that really counted. A meaningful hang tag performance rating should tell you the following things. Number one, how cold. That's all that's on them right now. Minus 20, minus 100. But then it would say for how long. We're talking 10 minutes? Those flip-flops that you had right there. It's like, okay, my feet are going to be warm. I'm not standing right on the snow. I'm standing on this insulated insole. I'm standing out there at 60 below zero. How long is that going to work? I don't know, 10 seconds. So if it said these flip-flops will keep you warm at 60 below zero for 10 seconds, now you start making a judgment about them. If it's going to be the VB boot, then it says, well, keep your feet warm, set, and see, it needs to tell you under what conditions. That's one of the other things. Sedentary. Are you active or sedentary? In a case of being sedentary at 30 below zero with the VB boot, well, you're okay for an hour. Not necessarily warm, but you're okay for an hour. In the case of the Frostbuster, 30 below zero, sedentary, how long is it going to work? I don't know, days, hours and hours and hours. And so how cold, for how long, under what conditions, and then what is your physical condition are we talking about? These are other things that come into effect. As a matter of fact, hang tags are dubious because if you have, poor health, if you're sick, if age, circulation goes down generally with age into the extremities. If you haven't eaten in 3 days, you're dehydrated, all these kinds of things can have an effect on it. So, a meaningful hang tag, if it at least told you how cold, for how long, under what conditions, you'll have to make the judgment about what your physical condition is. So when it comes down to buying clothing based on hang tags, there is no standards for the rating system. Anybody can hang any number on there they want for any reason. That's the bottom line. Just decide this is what we want it to be. This boot's good for 100 below zero. It's kind of a contest to see who can hang the lowest number on there that people won't immediately laugh at. And that's why I have these pair of boots that are out there, that they're white and they have a felt liner in them and they come up kind of high and they have a little bit of reflective material and they rate them for 100 below zero. Well, they're good for 100 below zero, sedentary for 10 minutes. Now, if you're jogging and running and very, very active out there and you take care of your core and everything like that, and you're not just sitting around, they're probably good for a couple of hours at 100 below zero. The moisture is going to get you because it'll build up in them. They're going to get damp, and we'll talk about moisture here in a little bit because that's extremely important. I hope you start to understand. I'm just saying be careful. Use both some common sense but also some experience that you have that says, wow, I can really believe this, or, oh man, that's baloney. So what happens since there's no standard on this and people go around buying clothing and it's rated for these super low temperatures and everything, and then you're out there getting cold in it, and so you come back and you talk about how bad the weather is. Man, it is so cold out there, so miserable that I'm out there in my 40 below zero rated Sorel boots, and after an hour I had cold feet. It's really bad weather out there. Well, that 40 below zero pair of Sorels, sedentary, I rate them for something like 28 above zero. If you're sitting around at 28 above zero with those boots on, you're probably good for several hours. You're going to be okay until the moisture builds up in them, and then that will even get you within, 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. Sedentary. Where with the Frostbuster boot, I could sit around at 28 degrees forever. I can sit around at 28 below zero forever because of how they perform and the fact that your feet are not going to be building up moisture in there. So the reality is there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. That's what you need to understand. All right. Well, I hope those pictures will help illustrate that a little bit and help you get an idea for things. And my purpose is not to slam on a product and say this is terrible, but I am going to share with you what I know to be the facts, what the reality is, what the testing is. And I'll give you my opinion. When I say on that one Sorel boot, I rate it for 28 above zero. That's my opinion. But I'll tell you what, at 40 below zero, well, in our case, when we're doing our testing, at minus 30 in that cold box, on the average, and some people were higher than this, some people were lower than this, we simply said, well, you're going to be losing about 20 degrees per hour off your feet. Some people, it was faster than that. And the VB boot, 16 degrees per hour. Those are measurable. That's not an opinion. That's what we measured on those things. And again, that's very, very sedentary. We did those same tests wet. We took the VB boot and put on, soaking wet socks and put in there. We took the Sorel and we took the socks and the felt liner, got them wet and then wrung them out. We also took the Frostbuster boot. We got it all wet. And wring the water out. You don't want it to be, squishing in water in there. But in all of them, you got them wet. Wring the water out as best you can. You get back in there. Boy, do you crash in a hurry in the others. But in the Frostbuster boot, you know what happens? Your feet get dry. It's like watch that video on the Thermal John's freezer test. It'll give you an idea of how and why this works.